Hey, ladies, and welcome back to the Rooted Mama podcast. Now, I know, y'all, I'm not supposed to be here. I said season two ended, and it did, I promise. But I just wanted to pop in because we are officially on our homestead. And when we planned to move here, we wanted it to feel like an oasis of some sorts. And it really is that. Like when we step outside onto our front porch, there's the sound of a stream that's flowing on our property. There's the sound of wings flapping and birds chirping, and the leaves of the trees are blowing. And it's just super peaceful and it makes you want to reflect on life. And that's what I've been doing. And I've been asking myself so many questions about Rooted Mama. Like, me as the founder, where do I see this going? What is going on in the world with women? How can I make the biggest impact? And one of the questions that keeps coming up for me, and it's just one question, is that am I actually qualified to lead women into this new season of life? There's so much turmoil in the world. Women are riddled with anxiety and depression and shame and guilt and all of these like really big issues. And I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor. So, what makes me so qualified to lead all of these women into a new phase of life? And the answer is that I've lived it. So, we're going to talk about my story today. Welcome to The Rooted Mama, the podcast where motherhood meets wisdom, support, and empowerment. I'm Destynie, a mother on a mission to help women embrace a healed and fulfilling version of motherhood. Whether you're planning for your first baby, navigating pregnancy, or already deep in the parenting journey, each episode features real conversations with women in every stage of motherhood, insights from experts, and practical tips to help you feel grounded and confident. All right, so I am 33 years old, turning 34 in a couple of months, and most of my audience, based off of statistics, are around my age or a little bit younger. And because of that, I know that you all live in the same world that I do, which is the world of experts. We grew up trusting experts, whether they be on the news channel, whether it be like through word of mouth. Like our parents especially were very under the influence of experts, right? And so as women going into motherhood, like not necessarily being mothers, but even like leading up to it, we still have this same image of the expert, right? And we also have this desire to just please authority. Like we live up to what authorities tell us to live up to. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think a little sense of authority is a good thing, especially as a Christian. Like God is the ultimate authority, right? But at the same time, some of our issues, in fact, I believe most of our issues kind of stem from this idea that only the experts know what's best for us. And that brings me to a sermon that I was listening to a couple of months ago. And the pastor was talking about the power of a testimony. And if you don't know what a testimony is, essentially it's your life story. But the special part about it is kind of the ending. So a testimony usually is kind of a sad beginning, like a rough start, and then God steps in some way, or this person embraces God in their life, and then they see a dramatic change. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like them embracing God. It could have been like, they had a terrible accident and then they healed from it and now they're transformed in the process. So any of those sorts of like roller coaster rides where at the end it's a good thing or it's like trying to be a good thing, that's a testimony. And so the pastor was saying that a person with a testimony is unstoppable, and Satan knows that. And so Satan will act on people and try to keep them in the beginning of that testimony, the part where they're still run down, where they're still sad, depressed, still hurt, whatever. Tries to keep them there because once they get to the other side, they're unstoppable. Now, what does that mean? Because like whenever I first heard it, I was like, what do you mean like unstoppable? Like in what way? And if you take the spirituality out of it and just like use the example of you got a really good deal. Like you went to Target and you were in the $5, or less section, and you found something there that maybe it didn't have like a tag on it. And so you go to the front and you ask them, they're like, "Oh, well, since you found it over there, we're going to charge you $3 for it." And the thing probably was like $10, right? You're going to feel really good about that. And when you leave, you might even tell someone about it, right? Now, think about if there was an even bigger thing that happened where, like, you came out of whatever story and it was feeling really good for you. You're going to want to go tell everybody about it. So, if you apply that same sort of rationale to a testimony, but it's like transformative in your life, you're not going to want to shut up about it. So when the pastor said they're unstoppable, it's because the lower that you start and then end up on a high, the more likely you are to never stop telling people this story because it's so encouraging. And I was like, wow, especially when he talked about how the enemy will try to keep you in the low. And I'm like, yo, that's exactly what goes on in this world because there's so many people who are trapped in that first part of the testimony, the low part of the testimony, where they're confused, where they're anxious, where whatever, like insert mental health disorder or insert battle that they're fighting. The enemy likes to keep people in that phase. And when I thought about my personal testimony, I was like, wow, yes, like the reason why I go so hard for rooted is because I've lived what you all live. This is why I go so hard because of my personal testimony. And I've shared kind of the part around motherhood with y'all, but I've never gone from the beginning to explain exactly how I started and then how it led into motherhood and where I ended up with the severe postpartum depression and the autoimmune disorder that I had to, come out of, recover from on my own. So I'm going to tell y'all the whole story. And then ultimately, I'm going to share something with you that I believe is going to help escort you out of where you are right now into a place of joy and autonomy and peace and self confidence, and ultimately just feel like you love yourself, like you're proud of yourself, and you feel totally comfortable in your own skin. Okay? But first, I want to start with who I was in the beginning of all of this. So, who was I? Who was I in the beginning of all of this? Well, I was a child. We need to go back to childhood. And when I was a little girl, I was very quiet, very curious, silly, kind, super introverted. And I loved nature. I like spent a lot of time. I think I spent more time than what normal kids do, just like sitting outside and like looking at how things work, like ants crawling and trees. Like I would pay attention to the seasons and how things changed over each season, like very introspective, very observant. And there was a level of innocence to me that I think I still have in some ways, but definitely was there then. Like I knew people were around and I cared about them, but I definitely thought that like no one, I guess I just didn't like pay too much attention to like their motives and things like that in the beginning. Like I didn't really pay attention to that. And it started to become not an issue, but like something that I paid attention to because of my family. So I have like a very big family, just so many kids everywhere. And so I have a huge family that I was always around. Thank God it was such a blessing, especially now having kids and like being alone a lot with my kids. It was definitely rare to grow up in the family that I did. But when I was growing up, I most of my family members are extroverted, and it became more and more noticeable like when they would draw attention to me doing like some weird introvert thing like in the corner, like, oh, there's Destiny like looking at ants again or whatever. And I started to become like more aware that I was different, but not in like a way that isolated me, at least not yet. But it was just like something that I paid attention to. And as I got older, more they pointed it out more. Maybe friends pointed it out, or my mom like signed me up for all these different things like the girls club, cheerleading. And as I got to be around more people who weren't my family, they weren't so nice about it. And so I started to become cautious of people, and so cautious that I guess it was like people pleasing. Like I started to try to be more extroverted, like to be like to like the things that they liked, because no one wanted to talk about bugs, right? Like no one wants to talk about my rock collection. It was weird, but like they wanted to talk about Usher or Bow Wow, like all of these, pop culture references. I didn't even watch like normal TV shows. Like I vividly remember watching A Birth Story on TLC and like the untold stories of the ER. Like y'all, I'm sorry. Like I just was never just a regular person. And so one thing that did stand out for me, like that everybody loved, was that I was very smart. So like academically, I've always shined. Like it was just my thing, and my family was really proud of that. My cousins loved that I was smart. Like we were all around the same age, and they would always point out that I knew these big words and all that stuff. So that was like my thing that I could hold on to, and I did hold on to like throughout life, that I was a very smart person, that I did good academically, that I was going to be successful in life because I was a smart person. Okay. So that brings me into like teens and high school. This is where I started to get like, I started to tag on more negative traits. So, like, shame and rejection were really big here. For some reason, like, I don't know if y'all had this issue. I think it was just puberty, but then even into adulthood, I still had this issue. Like, I'm not ashamed to say it now. I've been redeemed at this point through Jesus Christ. But when I was a teen, I sweat so much, like under my armpits, especially. It was called like hyperhidrosis or something. I remember looking it up because it was so embarrassing to me. Like, I would get these huge pools of sweat under each arm, and then like with we had to wear a dress code and like those really terrible business style shirts, and I would just like drench those shirts. And maybe there was a level of social anxiety there too that I was internalizing like in my body, but regardless, that was going on, so I was like kind of embarrassed about that. And then I went to a predominantly white high school, and it was just a lot. Like I still have to process. Sometimes I don't even remember things about like that school, and my friends will bring it up and I don't remember it because some of my psyche has just like blocked it out because it was that traumatic for me. And again, like I'm not a victim. I'm not saying like anybody did anything to literally hurt me, but I think just the best way to describe it is like if you've ever had fish, like you had it in a bag and then you just dumped it into a tank that was not they weren't ready for, like they weren't acclimated to. That's kind of how I felt like being in that high school, because I think there were 3 black people in my class, like total, and there was like, hundreds of kids. So it was just like a culture shock. And I had been around white people, like, let's be honest, like I've been around white people before. And so I knew about them, but it just felt like they didn't know a lot about black people. And I think it's because of the location I was in. These kids were like pedigree children. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but like they started off in private school like from kindergarten, and then they went all the way up to this high school with the same people. Like, they went to K to 8 and then to the high school, right? And so they had stayed in like this little bubble of mostly white people, and mostly the same people, like same people as them, right? As far as like socioeconomic status. And so I think that played a part because it was like they didn't know what to do when they like encountered someone who was just like a regular Waterbury. That's where I was from, like a regular city person who's also like a black person. So I'll never forget someone who was supposed to be my friend asked me when I got hurt. Like we were cheerleading and I got hurt and I was bleeding, and she was like, "Wait, you have red blood too?" This is like a 15, 16-year old, okay? And she asked if me, a black person, had red blood. So, okay, again, like she was a very sweet girl. Like we were very friendly, but those were the encounters that I was having. Like it was not good. And so when it came to boys, because that's where I'm going with this, when it came to like my self-confidence and um like sexuality, it was very awkward because the guys, I don't think they knew what to even do with me. I think some of their parents maybe were racist, and like if they brought like a black girl home, I'm sure it would be a stir, right? And so I just felt like throughout my high school experiences, in a nutshell, there were like a lot of awkward sexual encounters. And like, I didn't know that I was even good looking. Like, sometimes I would try to suppress like my big boobs and my big butt because like I look like a black woman. Okay. Like, I hit puberty in fifth grade. And then by the time I was like 12th grade, I looked like a video vixen. So, and that brings me to college because when I went to college, it was much more diverse. I went to a D1 school in Connecticut, and that's important because I was a cheerleader. And if you know anything about D1 schools, they have a lot of black men who play the sports, right? And immediately I was getting attention from all these men, and I didn't really know what to do with it because I that wasn't my experience. Like in the high school, I thought it was ugly. Like I don't want to say I thought it was ugly. Like that Destiny. This is dramatic. But like I didn't know that I had it going on the way that I did because all of the girls in my school at the time that I was going to school wanted to look like Abercrombie models, like super skinny, long torsos, flat everything. Like remember the multi-layer like there was a cami, like two camis, different colors, and then a polo shirt. Like that's what was going on. And I always look ridiculous because I have a short waist and like thighs. So it just didn't look right. But when I got to college, everybody was trying to holler at me. Okay? Like I'm not even like hyping myself, like it's just true. That's what was going on. And there was one guy who like showed me a lot of attention and I thought he was really sweet. And we had like a really bad traumatic thing happen. Like somebody was killed who was actually like very close to him on our campus. And me being like super empathetic, like the way that I am, I found out about it and he had gotten my number like a few weeks ago and I texted back and forth, but like nothing serious. But when I found out what happened to his friend, I just reached out to see how he was doing. And then we kind of like hit it off. And then it was a very fast into a relationship situation. And he, as a D1 football player, like a star on the team, was not looking for like a legitimate relationship, but he didn't lead that way. Like he was very loving, but he was still doing other stuff. I had no idea. Like the innocence that I talked about earlier was still very there now, like in this presence. Like I just thought that he really liked me and didn't have I never had this happen before. Like and not in this way. Like I had messed around in high school. Don't I was doing stuff and messing with boys and all this other stuff. But like, it just wasn't serious. Like, I never thought that anybody actually liked me. I thought I was just like doing it because we were getting drunk and like you're supposed to hook up with people and whatever. It was just kind of like frivolous, I guess is the best word. And then when I got to college and I met this guy, I was like, oh, I'm like going to have like a legitimate boyfriend. And then he was like very loving in the beginning. And I thought that he actually loved me. And I think he did. Like when I think about it, I think he did love me, but he was, a young man in a situation where he can go to the NFL. And so I'm sure he was going to keep his options open. And I didn't know that. There was the innocence there. Anyway, so he really broke my heart because he was unfaithful. And at the same time, um, I was like very stressed. Like I had a high workload because I was actually pre med to start, actually pre dental, but it's all the same stuff. Like you go in as pre med. And I was taking like all these really hard classes on top of cheerleading full time, like doing basketball and football, both men and women's basketball. And I was losing a lot of weight because I've learned this about myself that when I get stressed, I just don't eat. And so I was losing a lot of weight. And so he was being unfaithful. At the same time, he was critiquing my body because I was not looking like a video vixen anymore. Like I was just slimming out. And he would like make comments about that. And my self confidence just like went into the dumps. Like it was so bad. I had like very little worth. And I was just like chasing this guy because I loved him. He was my first love. And it just seemed like nothing that I did could ever maintain his attention. Like he had wandering eyes. And y'all know the thing, like I don't need to go through it. Like I'm sure that y'all have had experiences with someone like this. And so that's what was going on. And I didn't know any better. So I just like pursued throughout my entire college. And by the end of it, when it was time for him to graduate, he was a year older than me. Um, we just basically like broke it off from there. And needless to say that my heart was broken. And I feel like this was around the same time that I started to develop a lot of anxiety because I was constantly worrying about him. Like at the end of the relationship, because it was so rocky, but then even after, like, is he going to date somebody else? Like, what did I do wrong? Like all of these like intrusive thoughts, like, was it your fault? You could have done this. You could have done this. And I just developed like this anxiety. And the way that I solved it was two things. First thing was that I like crowdsourced my life. So I started constantly seeking input from friends. Like, should I have done this? Or like, what do you think? Whatever. Y'all know the deal because I'm sure y'all do it too. Just getting so much input from other people. Like, what am I supposed to do next? How do I get over this heartbreak? What should I do? What should I do? And the second part, the other way that I dealt with it was through sex. So the advice that I got from some of my friends, my very liberal northeastern friends, was feminism. So the way that you get over a heartbreak is to get even, right? Like not necessarily to like cheat on him or do any of that stuff, but like once you're done, you just go live your life, be free. You're a strong, independent woman. You're an educated woman. You're about to have a degree. You're about to, all the things. Y'all know the things, right? And that's what I did. So I started to pursue all these guys who are pursuing me, really, especially like when I graduated and I was in grad school. I was living in a really like it was a very college friendly city. It's called New Haven. If y'all don't if you're not familiar, New Haven is where Yale is. And there's a bunch of colleges all around the same place. So there's a lot of people in this area who are like the same age, right? And lots of the dating pool was like very good there, I would say. And so I was like finding all these guys. And also I had friends who graduated and moved to New York City and moved to Boston. So I was like going between all of these cities and like just finding all of these suitors, I would call them, and just like ravage them. Like that's the best way to describe it. Like whole phase doesn't begin to explain what I was doing. And all of it wasn't even for attention. It was like working through the heartbreak, but also like numbing this pain. And my friends, not all of them, but like I had one in particular who just fueled this because she was dealing with her own heartbreaks and like her own issues. And it made us feel good. It made us feel good again, not because of the attention, but like almost the conquest, if that makes sense. Like if you're listening, maybe you feel the same way. Like let me know, leave a comment or send me a DM. But that's the best way to describe it. It very much felt like a conquest. And I did this for years. And when I tell you that I had not a moral insight, not a God insight, y'all, like that's what that's what the truth was. I'm laughing, but I'm really actually not proud of it because when I look back, I was hurting. Like there was such a pit inside of me that only God could fill. And at the time, I was trying to fill it with literally anything, alcohol. I didn't ever do drugs. That was never my thing. But drinking, partying, I worked out a lot. Like I was trying to be a fitness model. Even that was like a weird coping thing that I was doing, but definitely the sex. Like that was like my biggest thing. And that leads me to I did this for years. I graduated through grad school, got a master's degree, achieved my dream job, a speech language pathologist, moved to Houston, and within, I would say, 6 months, I was sexually assaulted. And it was very sad, needless to say. And some of it was and I'll never blame the victim. That's not what I'm going to do here because I absolutely was a victim. And if you are someone who has experienced sexual assault, I want to tell you that I feel you. I know what it feels like. It's awful. I am sorry that you experienced this because it's still something that I carry with me to this day. Like, I will never forget it. And I just want to say that I'm giving you a hug right now. But after that, I carried a lot of shame and a lot of guilt because my conquest led me to this point where I was in a very dangerous situation that I really shouldn't have been in. So, like, now, as a responsible, 30 something year old mother, I would say, I hope my daughter never does half the things I do, because I absolutely was in a position to have that happen. Okay? Like, that's what I'll say about that, and I'll leave it alone. And so after that, I was completely broken. Like, depression, and I had panic attacks all the time, and I was like I had this anxiety that was in my body. I could feel like my heart would just like rapidly beat for nothing. Like, I would be laying down and then I would just have like these heart attacks. Like, that's what it felt like. And I just had no control over my life. Like, there was no area of my life did I feel control. And the interesting thing is that at the same time, as I was going through this, I was introduced to a friend who was really into a Bible study, and she was really into the church. And at this point, I still believed in God. Like, I never not believed in God. I was never an atheist, but I had questions. And a lot of it stemmed from being a feminist. Like, I never read the Bible. That's number one. Like, I had never fully read the Bible, although I went to Catholic school, know the verses, know the gist, never read the Bible. And so something that people always point out is how patriarchal the Bible is, and how, God is a he and all this other stuff. And so I really challenged that because I just felt like, as a woman, I didn't want to be subjected to the patriarchy that was in the Bible. And when I, encountered this friend, she was a very intelligent woman. She was beautiful. She was black. And because that's another thing, like, black people say that Christianity is the white man's religion that they use to oppress the slaves and all this stuff. And I just found her to be so interesting. I'm like, wait, you really believe in God? And she was like, wholeheartedly, yes, Jesus Christ is my savior. I was like, what? So she was patient and gracious enough to just sit with me through we would meet up all the time and just like answer questions and like talk it through. And I just felt like, wow, like, I had never thought about it this way. So she invited me to church, went to church. Her church was like so much fun. We call it Club Wheeler. If y'all are in the Houston area, is Wheeler still going on? But anyway, so we went to Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, and I loved it. I felt on fire after the first visit. Then she invited me to a Bible study, which really is a life group. Like, if y'all are in the church or like know anything about it, Bible studies are super boring and usually super boring. This was more like a life group where like we got together. It was like full of young adults, and it was very rare. Like, now, again, in hindsight, I'm like, wow, this is like super rare. And I miss it. I miss it a lot because there were so many young people, mostly like brown or like not white, but there are a few people who were white, but largely like a mix of many different ethnicities. And we just like we just learned about Jesus together. Like, and we were flawed. We still drank. We were trying to like, well, I was abstinent at this point because of the assault, but like, there were many people in the group who were trying to abstain, who were just like trying to be accountable. And I just appreciated watching people grow, like trying. And that was something that I didn't experience in the church before. Like, I saw people as hypocrites where they would be like, don't have sex before marriage, don't do this, don't do this. And then meanwhile, the pastor is like hooking up with the first lady's cousin or something like that, like on the side. The deaconess is cheating on her husband with so and so, right? Like, there was all this hypocrisy in the church, and I didn't like that. So when I encountered these people who were like, hey, I'm broken, I make mistakes, but like, Jesus forgives, and every day there's new mercies. And I was like, yes, like, I can get behind this. And especially like in the broken state that I was, it was just good to walk with others who were also dealing with the same mental health issues. Like the girl that I met who talked to me about Jesus was like, I have crippling anxiety, like at the same time. And I was like, me too. Let's help each other. Like, let's get through this together. And from there, it was going pretty good. But I have to be honest, I still felt many times like I didn't have any more life to live. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but I think it has to do with the way that society teaches us about success in like the American dream. So if you remember, my claim to fame, like the thing that made me special when I was young was that I was smart, that I was academically savvy, and like I was going to go places in life. And I did. Like, I got a master's degree, the first one in my family to ever do that. And I had a career that paid pretty good. But what I found was that my career was not my life. Like, I didn't actually enjoy it that much. There was still so much of life that was going on outside of work that I had nothing really to do with. Like, yeah, I tried out for Texans cheerleaders. Yeah, I would go out with my friends, but there was just like nothing that really gave a lot of meaning. And like Jesus was starting to do that, but it was very clouded by my understanding that I was supposed to be like I had reached the top of the ladder. Like it sounds kind of ridiculous now as I say it out loud because of what I've learned, but at the time I was just like, where do I go from here? And like I never necessarily wanted to be a mother. Like that was not at the forefront of my mind. Like, and then the images that I saw of motherhood weren't good. Like, mothers were really stressed out. A lot of them were single moms because I'm a black woman. So, like, the single motherhood rate is super high. I felt like babies were a burden more than like a blessing. And even with the women that I was talking to, like the Christian women, they really wanted to get married and they really wanted to be mothers, but no one could really say like why besides like, oh, I can't wait to have my own children. I'm like, but why? Like, what is it? Like, what is it that you want? Is it just that you just want the family? And so I started to like take on this idea that if I was truly a Christian, then I needed to get married and I needed to become a mother. But at the same time, I wasn't looking forward to it. Like I wanted to get married so that I could have sex and not live in sin. Like, let's be real. That's what it was. I was like, if I ever find a guy who I actually like, well, I can't have sex with him because sex outside of marriage is a sin. So, like, obviously, we're going to have to get married. And then, as a byproduct of that marriage, it would be children. But again, like, it just didn't feel like that was going to make me happy. Like I found out that the job didn't make me happy, and I also found out that the job didn't make me rich. And because of that, I was like, wait, the trajectory of this is never like wealth. And I thought in my head eventually we that I would just get to the point where I would just have like a whole bunch of money, right? Like that's what the promise of going to college was to us. Like, go to college so you could be successful. And I was like, success is buying whatever I want, living in a big house and having disposable income. And I was like, wait, I have like $70,000 in student loans that I'm going to be paying for the next 20 years. And by the time I'm done with that, I'm going to be like an old person. I'm going to be like near 50 years old by the time I'm done paying off this debt. And like, card debt and all these other credit card debt. Like, I was like, wait, no, this sucks. And so I'm building up to the fact that I was still feeling like there was no more life to live. I had suicidal ideation. I never planned anything, but I really was feeling like there's nowhere else. Like, it was very nihilistic at the same time going to church every week. And because I say that, it's actually the thing that saved me. The fact that I was still going to church every week, that I was still praying, that I had the foundation to at least still show up every week, to show up every day, even though I was like, what's the point? And this is the mentality. This is the person that I was when I met my husband and got married and became a mother. Like that was the woman I was. And so this kind of goes full circle. So now we're here. Y'all have heard me talk about how everything got worse in motherhood. And I've hinted at who I was before, where I was like, I had anxiety, I like shame and all this stuff. But now you know the whole story. Okay. And yes, I was healing. Like, it wasn't that I was stagnant, I was healing. I was believing in God. I did get married and I did choose to become a mother. Like, I still chose life. But at the same time, that was still the darkness, the dark cloud that was hovering over me in the midst of all that. So I bring that up because when I talk about how the things that you carry in your womanhood before you become a mother only get worse, it's because having a child is the biggest stressor that a woman can experience, that anyone can experience. So if you have something that you're carrying into it, it has no choice but to get worse. Like, especially in the way that women are becoming mothers in this society. Like, there's not a support system. There's not coverage. Like, they're not checking for you after that 6-week appointment after you've given birth. Like, that 6-week postpartum appointment, that's it. And even then, they're giving you a checklist. Like, do you have postpartum depression, right? And the thing with me is, I called it postpartum depression then, but now I don't. Because the thing is, I had depression before. I had panic attacks before. I had anxiety before. Like, I had all of those things before. And many people, like, when they say, oh gosh, I've stumbled into postpartum anxiety, I'm like, you have been an anxious wreck for the last 10 years. Like, did you think that you weren't going to have something in postpartum? Like, do we even call it postpartum anything, right? And anyway, so I've shared a lot about how I personally came out of it. Like, I took certain steps and how I got myself out of the postpartum depression and the subsequent autoimmune disorder that I developed because of the psychological stuff that I had going on. And I share it in my book, The Healed Mother. So if you want to read that, that's like my personal journey of healing, like step by step. And then I also talk about how I applied all of the things that I learned in my second baby, my second postpartum, like birth and all that stuff. So if you're interested in like the steps and like the personal journey of how I got it all together, you can check out that book and I'll put the link in the show notes. But I have to be honest that it doesn't address something that I think is a root cause for all women. And this kind of leads to what I promised at the top of the episode. So I've created a movement, which I'm calling Free Eve. And there's a movement attached, but there's also a direct kind of source, which is a live event that I'm going to be running virtually. And it's supposed to be intimate, it's supposed to be a workshop where we talk about some of the root causes, and it's really like one big root cause of so many issues in womanhood today. And I'm calling it Free Eve because it really has to do with our mother. If you're a Christian, but even if you're a Jew, even if you're a Muslim, all of our mothers, all of the Abrahamic faiths, the mother is Eve. And we know the story of Eve, right? She ate the apple and the curse fell on humanity and now we're doomed and all this stuff, right? And there's something to that where women today are still walking in this curse. And I don't want to give too much away because I'm still working on it and I want it to come out perfect. I want it to come out Holy Spirit inspired. So I'm going to hold off on the details for now. But I can promise you that if we get this right, if we can reverse the curse that we're all still embracing, that we're all still walking in, we will become the women that God intended, that God designed us to be. Because God never designed Eve to walk in this curse. She was a person before she ate the apple. She had a purpose and a destiny before she ate the apple. And through Christ, we all have that opportunity to go back to the garden, to go back to Eve's original design, the original design that God had for us as women. So if you are someone who has been carrying shame, who has been carrying guilt, dealing with anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, postpartum, whatever, I invite you to join me in this class. I have experienced all of these things, and I can tell you now with 100% certainty that I am not that woman anymore. In fact, it feels like I buried that woman. It's almost, as I'm telling this story, it doesn't even feel real. It feels like a dream. Like it doesn't feel like I was ever that person because of who I am now. There's so many things that I had tried up until the point of discovering what I discovered, what I'm going to share in this class. And it never worked. There were so many things that I did, like going to therapy and all styles of therapy, and none of those things worked for me. It always felt like more work, especially as someone who's like an overthinker or, like intrusive thoughts. Whenever I would go to a therapist and they had this cognitive behavioral therapy where like you have to capture a thought or replace it with a better thought or write it down and do all this stuff, it always felt like more work. I'm like, really? You're making a thinker do more thinking? It wasn't until I went through this transformation of my identity, like the core of who I am, and figured out who God actually designed me to be, that's when I experienced true change. And like, I know it's not the easy route. Like, I'm going to be honest, it's not going to be easy. It's actually going to be very, very hard. But the thing is, like, with some of these things that are coping mechanisms, like these quick firefighting coping mechanisms, like taking medication or drinking alcohol or like whatever, any of those numbing things, they only numb. Like, they're not going to take away the pain. Definitely not long term. And what I've experienced is long term healing. Like, I can't go back. I'm dancing on the grave that I once lived in. I cannot turn back. And so, if you want to experience true change, like a true transformation, a change that you'll never, ever let go, this is the workshop for you. And this is the movement for you. Like, we are done. We are not living under the curse anymore. Through the Lord Jesus Christ, we are redeemed. We are redeemed back to the garden. We can live in God's original design for womanhood. But it starts with you accepting that and grabbing it. Like the violent took it by force. That's what it says in the Bible. The violent took it by force. If you are willing to take your healing by force, then walk with me. And truthfully, I'm looking for women like you. So if you said yes to this, I'm looking for women like you. I'm not looking for the masses. I don't care about popularity. I'm not trying to get a huge following anywhere. I'm looking for the women who are like, yes, I am taking my healing by force. Nothing, you're not holding anything back. Like, that's who I want. So if you're someone like that, join me in Free Eve. I'm going to launch it in July, but I have a wait list that's already up. So I'm going to put that in the show notes. And if you sign up through the wait list, there's going to be a discount attached to that. So I would highly advise you to do it that way instead of waiting until I officially launch, because then you'll have to pay full price. All right, ladies, that's all for today. I hope I see you all in Free Eve, the workshop. If not, that's okay too. But either way, I can't wait to see you all in the next episode. Take care of yourselves. Thank you for tuning in to The Rooted Mama. I hope today's episode left you feeling inspired, supported, and a little more rooted in your own motherhood journey. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another mama or mama-to-be. Remember, motherhood is a journey best shared. So let's keep growing together. Until next time, stay strong, stay supported, and stay deeply